Welcome to SVG-TV News for Monday, February 5th, 2024. I am Rochelle Baptiste with the details. With a 5 to 5.5% economic growth projected for St. Vincent and the Grenadines this year, forensic accountant Kirk De Silva said certain macroeconomic risk factors could affect such growth, noting that the message of propel growth was loudly sent in the 2024 budget presentation. De Silva was a panelist on SVG-TV's Viewpoint program last evening, discussing the 2024 budget and whether or not it is a poor people's budget.
A slowdown in global growth and continued international pressure on prices can negatively impact the level of growth forecasted for SVG. We know what is going on in the Middle East, we know what is going on in the Ukraine, and the war seems unstoppable. And oil prices are poised to climb in 2024. Again related to the Middle East conflict.
So these are all external factors that
these are all external factors
jeopardize
seriously, they are risk factors that may seriously impact the growth rate and the expansion of the economy. So I was talking about the expansion and the projects, so I'm now looking at some of the risk
factors
that may actually, natural disasters, the persistent threat of climate change, as manifested in rising sea levels, the extreme weather conditions, hurricanes throughout the Caribbean and so forth, could compromise the economic stability. Last year, for example, we had very dry season which have impacted agriculture here. Then, of course, there's an internal one. Those external factors, there's one of tourism and security, which go hand in hand. And crime can impact the growth and sustainability of the tourism sector. And I think that's something that the government would seriously need to look at. Sometimes, from time to time, American, Canadian governments put out travel warnings and that sort of thing. So all these are factors that could inhibit the growth and the expansion of maybe GDP in 2024. And we pray and hope that God would save us from the natural disasters and so forth.
Noting that it is a deficit budget with the current expenditure exceeding the current revenue by some $25 million, De Silva said a deficit budget is not always a bad thing and a surplus is not always a good thing. However, one has to be careful with a deficit budget, as a recurring deficit budget has implications for the national debt, which now stands at $2.4 billion or 82% to the GDP ratio. On the question on whether the national debt is too much of a burden, De Silva said consideration has to be given to the fact that the budget came as the country is coming out of COVID-19 and the Lasso Freire volcanic eruption, which resulted in more expenses for the government than anticipated. Pointed out that budget 2024 has a capital expenditure of $571 million, with some worthwhile projects including the port expansion project, the road rehabilitation project, the upgrade of the Annisvale playing field, construction of more homes for the displaced. The forensic accountant said by expanding the economy with these projects in time to come, he believes the government will meet its objectives of reducing the national debt to about 60% by 2035. Also on the panel was President of the Public Service Union, Elroy Boucher, who said he often liked to look at the budget through the lens of ordinary worker and how does it affect an ordinary citizen who is just trying to survive. Boucher said while the government will make the argument that budget 2024 is a people-centered budget, and it may seem that way in some regards, given some of the incentives being offered, including housing and increase in the minimum wage, which he deems as good policies. The trade unionist said the fiscal measures in budget 2024 have to also be considered and how they affect an ordinary citizen. The PSU president said at a closer look, it seems that budget 2024 is one which erodes the middle class, which he said is now bearing the financial pressures. According to Boucher, the people have to feel the budget in a positive way to decide that it is a people-centered one.
Many years ago, when we used to say The ordinary man could have gone by a vehicle because they were Skittles. Cheap. It was affordable. Now, you are seeing where, as of last year with the new tariffs on vehicles, that is out the door. So the ordinary man can't really afford to. The middle income persons even struggling to. So when you look at the people who are driving or have a vehicle, it's normally now within the range of the middle class. And I have often said it's the lower middle class and the upper middle class. And those who are in the lower middle class are definitely going to struggle. They're going to find it as a struggle to address what is in the budget and its impact on them. As a union, we'll also look at job creation. What is in the budget that can spur job growth? We notice the government have mentioned standards opening in March. That is very positive for the economy. We're looking at 500 jobs, perhaps 900 by the time they're in full swing, and then the opportunities for agriculture, farmers, etc., etc. All of those are positive aspects of the budget. So we have to balance all of that. Then we also have to look at the roads. It is the ordinary man who have to use the road infrastructure. I mean, I'm coming up here, and it has been horrible for years and still horrible, right? And every year, every budget, you hear about millions. I think the last time from 2022, there was like 70 million apportioned for road infrastructure. Yet we cannot feel that. The transportation industry can't feel it. They are complaining, but we're hearing about huge sums allocated for road. But we're not feeling it.
Noting that budget 2024 in many respects is bold and ambitious, lawyer Roderick Jones said with the country on a trajectory of growth in GDP, which the current administration must be commended for, there is, however, a concern that the growth is being fueled by capital projects, which means that the government is largely responsible for the economic growth, and one has to wonder about its sustainability.
What I personally would like to see is a GDP that is a better combination of growth in the private sector as well as growth in the public sector. Because the reality is, whenever there is growth in our GDP and it's primarily fueled by government spending, if our government isn't mindful to ensure that, one, the GDP, the growth in our GDP realizes sufficient revenue to begin with, so that growth can be sustained on one hand, and two, the government isn't mindful to ensure that it does a good job in managing our recurrent expenditure. What we do is continue to create a gap between what we earn and what we spend. And ultimately, we are going to create a deficit that can very easily become unmanageable. So that is my issue with the sort of growth that we have, and that is primarily fueled by government spending on these big capital projects. For now, it's good. In the short term, it's always a good thing. It's good when a country is set on a trajectory of growth, particularly what's happening in the other Caribbean islands. But we still have to be mindful that we do all the right things in managing our growth in our revenue and managing our recurrent expenditure to make sure those things, are kept under control.
Skilled Vincentian contractors and other persons working abroad will now be able to come back home to St. Vincent and Grenadines to work and live if they wish to, with an increasing number of job opportunities in the country. This is according to Minister of Finance, Economic Planning and Information Technology, Camila Gonzalez, who on WeFM Issues at Hand program on Sunday said there is a construction boom taking place in the country which will need all the skilled workers it can get.
I think a lot of those those Vincentians who are now working in Antigua and the BVI and the rest of them, Barbados, I think a lot of them will come home because it's always better to be at home. Your costs are often lower if you're at home, you're staying in your house and all the rest of it. And the wages, the demand is now getting greater and the wages have to rise to meet the demand. So I think the same economic imperatives that drove some of these people to go to Tortola or go to Antigua will drive them home, will invite them back home. So I think a lot of Vincentians will come home. We've already seen that on the particularly large project, the Sandals project, where there are some people who say, man, I was overseas and I got this work and I came back and everything. So that's part of it. But I think that on a project by project basis, there will be a case sometimes, particularly on the large projects, to bring in some additional labor. And this is not a new challenge. It just happens that historically, St. Vincent and the Grenadines was a source of this labor, and we exported this labor to the region. But now our construction demands and where we are on our developmental arc will require us to bring some of those workers home.
The finance minister said with the way things have been progressing, it seems that the country will have to import workers as the construction of the modern referral hospital closely approaching.
The workforce in St. Vincent and the Grenadines has to catch up with the demand and the ambitions of the government right now. And until it does, I believe that we will find situations where we have to import some workers. You mentioned tilers. I again go back to the Sandals as an example. They're currently tiling 300 rooms, and they're doing it double time. And they're not only tiling 300 rooms, they're tiling a conference center, 10 restaurants, a lobby, and various recreational facilities. They could not find enough tilers in St. Vincent and the Grenadines to do the job. They have 600 local workers on the site, but they also have close to 600 foreign workers on the site, because they simply could not find all of the skilled labor that they needed to find all at once. The Holiday Inn Express has 85 local workers, but they also have 30 foreign workers on the site. And it's becoming increasingly a trend that before it was a situation where it was only a skill that did not exist on the island. So, okay, we're only bringing in an MEP engineer or some sort of hydrologist or something like that, because we don't have those people here.
And Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves earlier today paid a visit to the construction site of the modern port in capital Kingstown. Accompanying the Prime Minister on the visit was Minister of Urban Development Binava Brown and participants of the Women in Construction Project Initiative by Acon Construction, which is building the $620 million port project. Project Director for Acon Group Inc., Tam Smith, provided the Prime Minister and his delegation with the tour of the facility under construction and explained some of the elements.
The east side, the wall is complete, and as you see along the south side, right along to where they're sticking up over there, almost complete. By the end of this week, we'll be finished on the south side.
Let me ask you, is it more economical to put the sheet pile than to put the X blocks?
Well, if you put X blocks, you've got to go further.
Yeah.
You take a lot of land up because it has to go at kind of 1 to 5. The X blocks they do a different thing altogether.
But what is cheaper to install?
You wouldn't install X blocks here because you wouldn't have a face to.
Yes, I understand.
So the X blocks.
If you're doing a city fence.
Yeah.
You can use this too.
Again, it depends on waves and wave heights, frequencies, etc. Obviously, the two big needles that we have here, what they're doing is they're going down, vibrating them into the soil below the native soils, the seabed, to compact that, and we put the stone in so that it doesn't liquefy during an earthquake and the structure remains intact up to, I think it's a 7.5.
On the Richter scale. Yeah. But you're liaising with the port as to when the equipment to be installed? With the port authority as to when the equipment to be installed?
Yeah, they were over here last month The full board came over, and there's constant liaison between us and the PIU and the board.
All the equipment issues have been resolved more or less?
Yes, Prime Minister.
Okay, good. Fine.
While on the site visit, the Prime Minister was introduced to some of the workers, including those who are retained as part of the Youth Empowerment Service and Support for Education and Training Programs.
So, sir, these are some TVET students.
Yes.
We are forming a closer relationship with TVET and going to be offering internships to students in the trades. And these two instructors have been part of our Women in Construction program, where we go to secondary schools and really try and raise awareness of construction as an option for women as well as men.
You're doing TVET where? At Barrel Technical, and you? Huh? Same place. You too. You're an instructor, yes. At Barley? How long is the internship?
I'm not sure. I do small engine repair instructor.
You do?
Small engine repair instructor.
Small engine repair.
Yeah.
Very good. What are you all doing respectively?
They are building construction drafting students.
Construction drafting?
Yes, in Form 4.
Very good. You learning a lot here?
Yeah. Yes. Yes, sir.
The port project, which is the second largest capital project to be undertaken here in SVG's history behind the Argyle International Airport, is expected to be completed by May 2025. In other local news now, we hear that several pieces of cadastral surveying equipment were handed over today to the Land and Surveys Department by the Digital Transformation Project, the DTP Implementation Unit, to expedite the surveying of properties with increased accuracy. The handing over ceremony, which was held at the Lands and Survey Department downstairs the Ministry of Agriculture, Richmond Hill, was hosted by the DTP and the Lands and Surveys Department, and was twinned with the opening of a training workshop for staff who will be using the new equipment. Speaking at the opening ceremony of the workshop, DTP's project coordinator Winston George said the digital transformation project is made up of main areas including the electronic single window for land and property transactions.
When we say an electronic single window, it's a single space through which persons who are transacting business on land or property can do so. And what that allows is the different public or private sector agencies that are involved, whether it's the lawyers or the banks or the government, who you have to go through to sell a piece of land, etc., would be on that particular space. So to achieve that, the project has a number of components. One has to do with the digitization of the paper deeds in the land registry. So we are actually working on that part of the project.
Chief Surveyor Keith Francis outlined and explained the use of the equipment received today.
The department has not had this capability before, and we are very pleased that we have been entrusted with this type of equipment. The geodetic control, as Mr. George has explained before, we currently use a system of grid coordinates. It is so ancient, it is called the British West Indies grid, established in 1945. And it is a system that has served us well, but with technology and the forward movement, we are hopefully going to be moving to what is called WGS, remind me? 84. All right. And the transformation is that we are going to have a consultant come in to tell us how we can transform our existing data into data that can be used electronically using the GPS system. That is one part of the equation, the geodetic transformation. The imagery, our latest quality imagery that we got flying aircraft was 2007.
Francis noted that the data collected through the expedition will at some point be available through a web portal at a cost for businesses and other private sector entities.
At some point, we are going to have this data available through a web portal at some cost to businesses, valuators, banks, other interested parties to be able to view and access. And we are hoping that we will move forward soon in that area. The only thing missing from what we have received so far are 15 PCs and 1 laptop computer. Those are already ordered and on their way. However, if I can ask the cameraman to pan around our office, we can see that even if those computers were to arrive today, our office is not 100% complete. So we basically have no space. So I would like to use this opportunity to implore the officials who may be watching this to have the requisite work completed, because the equipment as we have currently is in storage. It's of no use to anyone. We go out and use it. We have no computers to come and download it on. So we need to have this addressed expeditiously.
In more local news now, we hear that students of the Thomas Saunders Secondary School were dismissed earlier today with a temporary school building on the E.T. Joshua tarmac said to be experiencing a flea infestation. President of the SVG Teachers Union, Oswald Robinson, in a telephone interview with SVGTV News, is calling on the relevant authorities to take the necessary steps to address the situation, noting that all schools across St. Vincent and Grenadines should be safe for teaching and learning.
There's a problem at the Thomas Saunders Secondary School, problem with infestation of flea. As you know, dogs usually sleep under and at the school. Dogs are on the school compound. That whole tarmac area is an area that you have a lot of animals used to be loitering. So the Thomas Saunders Secondary School will be closed at 9:30 today. We call on the authorities to really engage the other relevant authorities like the Ministry of Health to properly disinfect the school, clean the school, ensure that the school is properly fenced so that dogs cannot get in and other animals. Thank you.
In 2022, students of the St. Vincent and Grenadines Girls High School, who are also temporarily accommodated in a building on the tarmac, were sent home due to a flea infestation at the school. At that time, it was reported that some students were bitten by fleas, and persons suspected that the situation may be as a result of stray dogs that live underneath the wooden structures that have been erected on the tarmac while repairs are being carried out on the original structure of the Girls High School at Richmond Hill. A number of schools across St. Vincent and the Grenadines are this week celebrating Literacy Week 2024. The Park Hill Government School is one such school which is hosting several activities for Literacy Week 2024. Senior teacher and coordinator of the school's Literacy Week, Shelley-Ann Marks, is hoping that by the end of the school Literacy Week, teachers will be able to observe improvements in their students' reading and comprehension skills. The theme for the school's Literacy Week, selected by the Ministry of Education, is Read What You Write. In a telephone interview with SVGTV News, Mark outlined the planned activities for the school Literacy Week 2024, which commenced today with students making a TikTok video on a home project or dish.
On Wednesday, we asked them to bring in their hats, their creative hats, and on the hats they should have little sentences based on a specific story. The story would be their choice. So for example, a student makes his or her hat and they decide that they're going to depict Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. So they could have some little sentences written on the hat, And then when they come in on Wednesday, they would share the information on the hat, what they have written on the hat. Because the emphasis is really read what you write. That's the theme. Read what you write. So whatever they would write on the hat, they would come and they would read it out aloud for others in the class to hear. On a Thursday, we would be doing a community outreach, because it is not only centered around the school compound itself. So we have decided to extend it to the community, where we would have a switch role. Here is where the children would take on the role of teachers, and teachers take on the role of children. And this taking on of the role is not only to dress up as children and teachers, but students would actually be given opportunities to go out to the front of the class and do a lesson, maybe a 10-15 minutes, and teachers would sit in as students.
Mark said listening and speaking are some of the strengths students must possess in their developmental progress.
Cannot walk without the other. So the children, they need to develop the listening, the speaking, the reading, and the writing. And then you never know, when they do these and their oral languages develop, maybe one of these days you would see a few of them at the TV station coming.
The Chimoka Government School is also celebrating Literacy Week with a series of activities. In a telephone interview today with SVG-TV News, Principal Bobsy Joyet emphasized the significance of reading and comprehension from an early age.
Okay, it is important to highlight literacy, and what we are focusing here on at this time is just reading literacy and not the other literacies. And it is important that children learn to read. We learn to read at an early age, and those who have not learned to read, it is important that they know in life they must be able to read. Hence, we are spreading our message not just in school, around the community, and with the elderly. It is important. Everything in life right now is about reading, and reading is the springboard from which the other areas spring.
Principal Joyet gave an overview of the Literacy Week's events to be hosted by the school, which included Drop Everything and Read activity.
Tuesday, we have Read What You Write, and that would be primarily the grades 4 and 2 students. We'll be reading to the entire school body their compositions, Read What You Write. And on Wednesday, we'll be reading in our red socks. Now, that's a new initiative where every person on the school compound is expected to wear a red socks to school, and it would be like a little march around the community, just a little march. It would not be anything big, a walk around the community with placards and posters encouraging persons to read. So it's dubbed Reading in Our Red Socks. On Thursday, we have a student council and the Red Cross group, and they will be going into the community to read to the elderly. Now on Friday, we have to bring the preschool in because my school has a preschool, and that would be the big hats off to reading celebration.
Joyet said the school will also be launching this week as part of their Literacy Week celebrations, a homework club aimed at educating parents on fundamental skills for teaching their kids to read at home.
There's a small homework club in the school, but we are launching a home-based homework club where we will be teaching parents the basic skills of how to teach their children to read, which is mainly, we are going to teach parents the art of storytelling in the initial stage, which will encourage them to read. Okay?
Yes, yes.
The art of storytelling, that's what we're going to do in our homework club, which will be launched this week.
In other local news now, we hear that the major crime unit of the Royal St. Vincent and Grenadines Police Force is investigating a shooting incident that has resulted in the death of Jensen Aubrey Hamilton, a 55-year-old laborer of Gibson Corner, which occurred about 7:20 p.m. on Saturday, February 3rd, 2024 in Gibson Corner. The police say preliminary information revealed that Hamilton was on his way home from Kingston when he was accosted by an assailant or assailants and shot multiple times about his body. The police were alerted and promptly proceeded to the scene. According to the police, upon arrival at the scene, Hamilton's motionless body lying on the public road a short distance away from his home. Hamilton was later pronounced deceased at the scene by the medical practitioner. A post-mortem examination is expected to be carried out on the body to ascertain the exact cause of death. The SVG police force extends condolences to all who are negatively affected by the incident and is encouraging anyone with information that can assist the police with the investigation to contact the Major Crime Unit at telephone number 1784-4571211, extension 4816. The police emergency numbers at 911 or 999 or any police station or police officer you are comfortable speaking with. The police say any information received will be treated confidentially. And the police at Kettle's police station in the Central Division have opened an investigation into the circumstances that led to the destruction of 2 wooden dwelling houses and their contents by fire in the village of Kettle's on Saturday, February 3rd, 2024. One of the houses destroyed was a 20 by 30 structure made from plywood and covered with galvanized sheeting. It was occupied by Jason Samuel, a 29-year-old truck conductor of Kettle's, his common-law wife, and their 4 children. The other house was a 10 by 15 plywood structure covered with galvanized sheeting, owned and accompanied by Samuel's brother, David Perry, a 44-year-old truck conductor of the same address. Samuel and his brother were not at home when the fire destroyed the houses. The police say neighbors were alerted and used buckets of water to put out the fire, unsuccessfully so. The police were also alerted and officers from the Kettle's police station responded and assisted in trying to extinguish the fire. Officers from the fire department later arrived on the scene and extinguished the fire. Both families were relocated to the Kettle's Learning Resource Center. The police say the cause of the fire remains undetermined at this time and are asking members of the public who have information that can assist with the investigation to call 999 or 911 or contact the Kettle's police station at telephone number 1784-4561750.